Alright folks, welcome to another edition of Lid Tips, the ham radio show where we discuss or talk about topics that are of interest to ham radio or amateur radio operators. In today's episode, we are going to cover past comments and questions from viewers on other Lid Tips videos. So this will be our August 2020 Q&A. It gives everybody the opportunity to participate in the series and drive the direction of the conversation. Also, if you like this video, there's a bunch of buttons. A like button, a subscribe button, a comment button. Go ahead and click them. It'll make you happy. Anyhow, hold on and we'll get started. Hopefully everybody made it back. Our first comment comes from the last Q&A video that we did in July, and it's from our friend Steven. He says, please check both your intro music and voice levels in your production here. Your voice level is low and the intro is high, and it about blew me out of the room at the opening of this video. This is very annoying, and will likely cause me to avoid this channel altogether in the future, let alone subscribe. Well, the one thing I want to say is I've been making videos for a while, and I've done a lot of them, and I generally don't get a lot of complaints about audio, but it happens. I get complaints about audio, I'll get complaints about lighting, I'll get complaints about what I said. What I want to say, Steven, is I'm sorry that this experience was so traumatic for you. And I do hope you continue to watch the videos, and I hope you subscribe to the channel. But if you don't, I'll be okay with that too. Our next comment comes from Kevin, and he says he wants to bust my chops on my pronunciation of toroid. That's how I say it. That's how they say it around here. Actually, I'm not really sure how they say it around here because I don't know anybody who talks about toroids. Maybe it's toroid or toroid, but I say toroid. This comment is quite a long one, and it came from the dipole video that I made using 3D printer parts. And Eddie makes a lot of good points. There's some of them that I agree with, some of them I don't agree with. But he has challenged me to think about things a little bit differently. And he starts off by talking about speaker wire being no good because it can stretch and things like that. And when I make these antennas, I put my antennas up and I leave them up for a couple days. I take them down and I test another antenna. Part of that is because of my curiosity around antennas and antenna building. But the other part of it is, in order for me to continue to make videos, I've got to do different things, and part of that's antenna building. If an antenna stretches and becomes out of tune, that's okay. I'll just cut it, or I'll make a new element. It's not really that big of a deal. When I use the speaker wire, I get about 400 feet of wire for about $18 off of Amazon. And that makes it cheap enough and easy enough for me to play around with and experiment. If I'm going to make a long-term antenna or something I want to be a little bit more rugged or durable, I'll use different wire. The other one is he says you don't need a 3D printer to make a dipole. And while I completely agree with him, using the 3D printer to make parts for my dipole makes the job a lot easier, it's neater, and it's cleaner. And so while you don't need it, it certainly helps. He also says that the PLA that I use in the printing is not UV resistant, and he's right. But that kind of goes back to the comment that I made before. If I start to have sun damage on any of the parts of the dipole, I'll print new ones. It's not a big deal. He also talks a little bit about using the speaker wire as a winding on the toroids. And here I think he's right. That wire is not probably up to the task of handling high temperatures the way like a solid core was. So I do want to say Eddie has inspired me to start using a copper core wire on the toroid wraps, and he's right. So anyhow, I appreciate the comment, Eddie. From the same video, Robert Proctor asked if the same principle would work for 10 or 20 meters. And it would. Just use the West Mountain radio dipole calculator to calculate your element lengths, and you should be fine. Our friend Tony Ling asked, what does lids mean to an Englishman? I'm confused. Well, I'm not an Englishman, so I don't really know exactly what it means to an Englishman. But to an American, a lid is a slang term for somebody who is generally considered a poor operator and doesn't follow best practices. Maybe they talk all up on the mic with their mic gain all the way up, or maybe they overmodulate their digital signals. Maybe they tune their radio in the middle of somebody else's QSO, or tune their antenna in the middle of somebody else's QSO. It just generally means somebody who is not very practiced at the art of ham or amateur radio. From the DMR top 10 websites, my buddy Mike Thompson says he's not a fan of DMR. Too much setup and everybody sounds like a robot. I have a hotspot that I built and all, but I don't use it much. Not fun. And I totally get it. I totally understand. One of the things about DMR is it is complex and there's a ton of configurations. The more you play around with it, the easier it becomes. And being pretty frank about it, what drew me to DMR was that complexity and then also the prevalence of the Raspberry Pi hotspots. I work in IT, and so I like messing around with configurations, and I really like messing around with Raspberry Pis and Linux in general. So for me, it was pretty cool. But I agree. I think one of the biggest problems with DMRs is the folks who don't have their a good radio. Not that you need to have a fantastic radio, but some of the cheaper radios don't quite modulate your voice correctly. Maybe modulate is not the right word. And people do sound a little bit robotish. I like it. I like to play around with it, but to each their own. Raphael commented, damn, he feels sorry for amateur radio notes. This site is great. And I've got to admit, Amateur Radio Notes is where I learned a tremendous amount of information on DMR, and it helped me configure my Raspberry Pi hotspots. I really hope that he comes back and continues to work on the site, or that somebody else picks up the torch and keeps carrying it. He did a fantastic job. It sounds like he took some time off to do some fun stuff. So anyhow, good for him. Much deserved break. And I'm just going to say, hey, I'm thankful for the work that he did, and then hopefully we can find another resource moving forward. So our next comment comes from Yeehaw, and he's had an 878 for a few weeks, and he still hasn't figured out how to set it up properly for any digital transmissions. However, he heard FM transmissions on his local repeater. Does a hotspot allow you to hear activity from further away? Well, a hotspot does allow you to hear activity from further away, but it uses the internet as a transport layer. So it's not really propagating the signal from your radio any further. It's taking a signal from your radio, it's feeding it through that hotspot and into an internet connection where other people are set up to do the same thing, and then it brings that signal back and transfers it to your radio. So in essence, your RF doesn't go any further, but your QSO or your conversation or your signal does. Hopefully that answers your question. Also, I've got a lot of videos on the BTEC DMR6X2, which is a very, very similar radio made by Anytone for BTEC. Maybe some of those videos will help you get it set up. The initial setup does take a little bit of time and some figuring out, especially if you're new to DMR. Anyhow, yeehaw, good luck with it. There's T.O. He shows up in the comments. He says, let's make some GoBox firmware for this thing. Power on, tap a ham band, tap sweet, C chart. Then when you're not in the field, power on, tap VNA, do VNA stuff, whatever it is. And so this is from the Nano VNA video that I made where Stan was trying to choose which Nano VNA to buy. And I actually think this is a fantastic idea. There's a lot of people that make alternative firmwares to the firmware that comes with the Nano VNAs. It would be very handy if somebody made a simpler, less complex interface specifically designed for hams where they could just plug and play and use the Nano VNA a little bit more efficiently than the way it works now. I'm still a fan of the Nano VNAs, but I really am a fan of this idea. Good thinking, T.O. And then Glenn, he jumped into the comments on the Nano VNA video as well. And he says, thanks for the clarification on the Nano VNA variants. This video will save many from the confusing nature of this mysterious product. Well, it might help you pick out a Nano VNA, but I'm not sure it's going to help with the confusing nature. Hopefully some of my other videos, and specifically the Nano VNA Saver software video, will help folks get started. The Nano VNA is a very helpful tool. I like mine. I use it all the time. Anyhow, thanks for the comment, Glenn. And here's my buddy Kyle. And if you're not a subscriber to Kyle, go check him out. AA0Z. Very, very technical, talented ham. He says, excellent video in a series of videos. I'm putting in my order for RNL for the high-end Nano VNA as part of his antenna toolkit. And I got to admit, I'm a little jealous here. I really do want that high-end, specifically for the data points that it allows you to collect. Good luck with the Nano VNA, Kyle. Let me know if you need any help. So our buddy KC5TGT, Radios and More, he comes in and he asks, why do I feel like I personally know the Stan guy? Glenn jumps in and says, I try to stay away from mirrors. Stan is always there when I look. And Mike, he commented, we are Stan. And I've got to admit that these guys are right. There's a little bit of Stan in all of us. And everybody's new at some point. And then at continuing points in your ham radio adventures, you're Stan. You're gonna come across something new. Something is going to emotionally charge you up. You're going to make a decision. You might make a bad decision. You're going to ask for advice. You're not going to follow that advice. We're all Stan. And Mike says it best. And then Gary chimes in on the Nano VNA video for Stan. And he says, great video, Stan should go for it. We're stating, for those that maybe aren't aware, the measurement points are not hardware specific. These are firmware that increases the measurement points for 201 for the H and H4. It does slow the sweep down a little bit, but still completes it in 2 seconds. And this goes back to what I was talking about, messing around with those alternative firmwares. I personally haven't messed around with the alternative firmwares. I install firmware on all kinds of devices, and I have videos showing it, so I'm not a liar. But I will say that installing the firmware in the Nano VNA makes me a little nervous. Now that I've got 2 of them, I guess I don't mind as much if I brick one, but I certainly don't want to render them useless, and so I've shied away from that. But maybe we'll try it out and do a video. Who knows? So this is from the last video that I did on basic Linux or Raspberry Pi commands. And I did that because there were some videos that had come out recently where folks were asking a lot of questions about Raspberry Pi, and I thought it might be helpful. I hope it was. I don't really know if it was. My buddy Don says, thanks, Ape. Good basic tutorial. Quick addition of CD with no arguments is a shortcut to your home directory. No need for the $home or tilde. Got anything coming up on Arduino? And the one thing I'm going to say to my good friend Don is that where have you been, bro? I've been typing CD tilde or CD $home for years. Years, man. I'm going to put you on speed dial for the next video so I don't have to have the same embarrassment and problem again moving forward. Then he asked about the Arduino. I do have an Arduino. It's a knockoff that I got from Ellagood. Maybe I think that's the name of it. I've only played around with it a little bit. I haven't played around with it extensively enough to do a video. But I was thinking about it. Who knows? There might be, we could do anything in the future. I don't have any plans to do Arduino videos, but it might happen. And that's going to take us to the end of the video. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody for the comments that they have left. Leave more comments, and that'll be your opportunity to participate in the video series as I mentioned before. Thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate it.